Hello, this is Dan Ferrisi, Editor-in-Chief with Commercial Integrator. So happy to be joined today by Bobby Swartz, who is CEO of Starin. The topic of conversation is, of course, the 40 under 40, celebrating young, hungry talent in the commercial AV industry, and especially how to bring more talent into our industry community in a mindful and intentional way. I know Starin is a thought leader on this. Bobby, you are a personal thought leader on this. That's why we wanted to talk to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dan. A pleasure as always to join you.
Well, I want to ask you not only about Starin, which I know has a very mindful and thoughtful approach to nurturing its own talent pipeline, but more broadly, let's start with the commercial AV industry. Do you feel like right now there is an intentional path that is bringing tomorrow's talent into our industry community? Or do you feel like there's still a lot of people who are just kind of finding their way into our industry family without really knowing where they're going to start?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think there's, outside of intention, I think it might be a necessity. We've seen it in ours. Obviously, coming up here, I was a 40 under 40 quite a few years ago. We've seen it as a necessity, the development of young talent coming into our industry. We had some stereotypes of, we're kind of the old man industry, has been a stereotype for a very long time here. Growing for the last 15 years in this industry myself, we've seen a lot of necessity for change on that. So I see glimmers of hope with a lot of companies who put in practical solutions, trying to develop their own pipelines of talent, which is critically important. And some people do it because they saw that coming a long time ago, and others now because there's less and less skilled AV talent in the world. And with the changing in network standards and all of the changes we've seen in the last decade, especially, it's a necessity for a lot of companies, I think, now to be able to develop their own pipelines of talent, because there's fewer and fewer qualified, experienced people that you can just poach and find.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Starin, which has an incredible amount of talent within its walls, people who are, really recognized and respected in our industry community. As the leader of Starin, you have a lot of responsibility. You have to make sure that you're attracting the very best talent, people who are going to represent this brand well and going to elevate it as it's continued to elevate over the years. What is your own talent strategy, personally and as an organization, to bring the rock stars on that you bring on?
Well, it's far from perfect, but it's always a work in progress. And like anything, it's what step can you take in the right direction each day, each month, each year. So still a lot of growing room here as we work out our own strategy. But one of the key things we did when I took over was just updating our motto to care more, be better. It was the first of, I care for the employees first. Listen to what they have to say, benefits, things. As generations change, expectations change. How do you meet or exceed those to retain talent? Because in the world, we've been talking about for years, it's so hard to find qualified people in the AV industry. It's been a big problem, and there hasn't been a silver bullet to do that. So it became early for us as we have to be able to start developing, and that's not easy to do. So restructuring the company in a way that allows people to enter, gain experience, and then grow. It's one of the biggest demands we've had from our employees. So it's not just out of a necessity for me, it's a necessity for what the next generation of workers they want. They want to know, how can I grow in an industry? How can I move to the next level? How can I gain the experience needed to do that? And I think as AV as a whole, we relied a lot on, well, this position's available. We don't necessarily care about college degree or things like that, but how many years have you been doing that job? That's getting harder and harder to find those. So here at Starin, it was about employee retention, listening to our employees first, then listening to our customers and trying to find that balance and empowering our employees to do that. That's been just careful restructuring to allow, we can hire somebody who has, that it factor. Mm-hmm. Typically young, fresh out of college or high school and excited, but with absolutely no practical experience, but they have that gumption, that fire, and saying, okay, can we organize our company in a way that says you can start and we will start to teach you the skills that allows you to progress into AV. So 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 8 years from now, 6 years from now? Is there a pathway for that? And like I said, it's far from perfect yet, but very conscious steps to organize the company in that way where we can take somebody who has that gumption and that fire and give them the tools to succeed and be able to grow within the company. And Starin's always been pretty good at that, but as we've gotten bigger and bigger here, now we're I think last time we chatted, we were about 60 employees. I think of it last year. We're over 100 now.
Wow.
So, going through that in kind of uncertain economic times where a lot of layoffs are happening, there's something about that that's been sticking and resonating, and we've attracted some amazing, amazing people, and I want to keep doing that and retaining them.
There's no doubt about it. You are doing that. I have every expectation it's going to continue. One question I have, in addition to providing opportunities for growth and the ability to build on your skill sets and all of that, and that being very, very attractive to people, I think to your point, we're a generation now, especially people in their 20s, even in their teens, who are looking at their career. They tend to be very values focused. You talk about care more, be better. They want to work for an organization whose core values align with theirs, that they can feel good about philosophically and mentally. How important is that as a business leader to make sure that you are appealing to people's core values, who they are, what they think is important? Is that part of care more, be better?
It is, because the final part of the care, it's care for our employees, care for our customers and business partners, and then care for our industry and communities. On that third tenet of that is really, it's about, we've put into, stepping back and looking, okay, what's the right way to do this? Because the CEO, it's like, well, if we're going to be charitable, do I get to be the final say? And I quickly said, I want nothing to say. I want to say, here's a budget, here's how we can do it. So we implemented, had to call out for volunteers, wasn't sure I was going to be taken, and said, can we have a Starin Cares Committee, is what they ended up naming themselves, but it was to steer charitable contributions. That had nothing to do. C-levels were not allowed in that group. We'd set a budget. And so we've, over the past year, that committee's formed. They have a committee chair, and it really steers what our money goes to, what our time goes to, where we can make contributions that have local impact. Because we're a totally national company. We have a lot of people here in Indiana, but over half of our workforce is remote. How do we devote funds and time for people to have effect in local communities? Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, it benefits the outreach at the Dunes National Park near Chesterton, Indiana headquarters. Well, I live in Florida. That has nothing to it doesn't mean anything for me. So having that committee to really say, here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to direct those. And here's how we're going to poll employees, work with the entire company to come up with programs that can benefit everyone, or at least have people have personal impacts in their areas. So things like VTO policies that we've put in place, different charities that they've selected that, cover a broad range of different things that we do drives for, and all of that. And again, giving the power to the people to make the decisions on that with full support from the C-level. And I think that's been a really important dynamic change, and really fits that kind of generational changes. People they want it to be personal. They don't want to feel like they're working for a company who makes all the decisions to the final. They have the power to help steer both their work-life balance, but just as importantly, or even more importantly, what social impacts we can have together, even in trying times.
That is so important. I don't think it's any coincidence you've been enjoying the growth you have from 60 something to 100 something at a time when a lot of other organizations are having layoffs and things of that nature. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think you've tapped into something really special here. Thank you so much, Bobby, for taking some time to join me today. Really appreciate your thought leadership as always.
Thank you, Dan. Pleasure as always. Thanks.
Thanks once again to Bobby Swartz, who is CEO of Starin. My name is Dan Ferrisi, Editor-in-Chief with Commercial Integrator. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Please check back on commercialintegrator.com each and every day for more exciting thought leadership content just like this.